Let's talk about something so many of us feel but maybe don't quite understand. Why does small talk feel so draining? I mean, that deep, almost physical exhaustion that could hit you after just a couple of minutes talking about nothing in particular.
Seriously, think about it. Have you ever been at a party or maybe just waiting for your coffee, and you get into a simple chat about the weather or weekend plans, and you walk away feeling like you just ran a marathon? If that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. And it turns out there's a really fascinating psychological reason for it.
You know, the story we're often told is that if you hate small talk, you must be shy or an introvert or maybe even a little antisocial. But the actual psychological truth? It's way more interesting than that. It's not some kind of social flaw. Nope. It's a sign that your brain is literally hardwired to search for meaning and real connection.
Okay, so let's dive into this and start by tackling that big misconception. We're going to look at what's actually going on inside your head from a cognitive perspective. So, here's the key idea. Your brain is built to throw out information it sees as arbitrary. Just think about it for a second. A comment like, "Nice weather we're having," doesn't really connect to anything you already know or care about. Your brain sees this, slaps an unimportant tag on it, and decides it's just not worth the energy to store. And this process leads to something psychologists call cognitive overload. See, your brain is a total efficiency machine. It is constantly working to protect you from getting swamped with useless information. So, when it gets flooded with all this conversational fluff, it has to actively work to filter that noise out. And that filtering process, it's mentally exhausting. It is literal work for your brain. And this breaks that process down perfectly. First, the surface-level data comes in. Then, your brain tags it as totally arbitrary. And finally, it filters it out as just noise. The most important thing to get here is that this isn't a passive thing. Your mind is actively putting up a shield to defend you from overload, and that effort is exactly what makes you feel so wiped out. Okay, so that's the brain mechanics of it all. But now, let's get into our psychological drive for real, authentic interaction. This is less about how we process data and, way more about our fundamental need for personal freedom.
Have you ever felt that little spark of internal resistance when you feel like you're supposed to act a certain way? Well, there's a name for that: psychological reactance. Small talk often feels like this rigid social script we're all just forced to follow. There are these unspoken rules, these expected lines, and for a lot of us, that feels like a command, a restriction on our freedom to just be ourselves.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It's not that you don't want to connect with other people. Of course you do. You just want that connection to be on your own terms. You want it to be real and self-directed, not some kind of performance based on what society expects.
This powerful drive for authenticity often comes from having what's called a strong internal locus of control. Now, in simple terms, all this means is that your sense of self-worth comes from the inside, from your own thoughts, your own actions, your own standards, not from getting praise or approval from the outside world. So let's just compare these two things. If you're driven from the inside, small talk can feel like a totally pointless game of trying to collect social likes or score points. You're just not interested in putting on a show for that external validation. What you're really looking for is a genuine exchange, something that gives you a real psychological reward, not just a polite nod. And this all brings us to a really powerful way to reframe this whole experience. What if hating small talk isn't about avoiding conversation at all? What if it's actually about searching for something more real? I want you to think about your mental and emotional energy like it's a battery. It's a finite resource, right? Every single interaction either charges you up or it drains you. For so many of us, small talk is a major drain with absolutely zero emotional payoff. So avoiding it isn't you being cold. It's a strategic act of self-preservation. You are protecting your peace. And really, this gets to the absolute heart of it. The math is simple. For people who feel this way, the choice is crystal clear. One single, deep, high-quality connection is worth so much more than 100 shallow interactions that just leave you feeling empty and tired. This whole quest for what's real shows up in a few interesting ways. You might find yourself using selective sharing, saving your best energy for the people and conversations that truly matter. You often feel this divided attention, this kind of low-grade stress where part of you is playing a role while the other part is just wishing it was over. And ultimately, you prioritize actually experiencing a moment with someone, not just displaying some kind of social image. So let's bring all of this together for the most important takeaway of all, seeing this trait not as some kind of weakness, but as a true sign of strength. Look, the bottom line is this. If you have ever felt weird or broken For wanting to skip the pleasantries and get right to the good stuff, you need to hear this. It is not a character flaw. It's actually a sign of incredible emotional strength, a really stable sense of self, a powerful desire for genuine connection, and frankly, some seriously high emotional intelligence. I want you to let that idea really sink in. The next time you find yourself getting drained by small talk, just remember this. You're not avoiding people. You are actively seeking truth. You're seeking meaning and authenticity in a world that is so often filled with just noise. And honestly, what could be more human than that?